Hello and welcome into my studio. I'm Kathryn Gray in Louisville, Kentucky. This is the studio where I teach every week and have been here for many years. I teach a lot of beginners and I'm looking forward to teaching you this lesson. So let's get started. Okay, I just want to go over the supplies with you. I have a paper towel where I wipe off my brushes and my paint. It's water-soluble oils, so we just need a little cup of water and a paper towel. And then this is the white paper that comes in your box. Is your what we call palette paper. And I glue mine down to a piece of cardboard so it stays sturdy and doesn't move around on me. I keep my paints close by so I can refill my palette. I usually get all the colors out for each project because you never know if you're going to need certain colors to mix into certain colors. Then this is the pretty little project we're going to work on this month. So I'll see you here in a few minutes and we'll get started with step one, the drawing. We're going to start the drawing of this cute little lamb. The first thing I do, if this is your first project with me, I'm going to dip my brush into my water and just thin out this yellow ochre. That's your second yellow, the one that's kind of a mustardy gold, and I'm going to thin it with a little water. We don't usually thin oil paint, but in the very first layer in our drawing, we sometimes thin it out so that drawing will dry a little faster as we continue our painting. So you see what I'm doing, I'm marking little halfway points on each side of the canvas. And that will help us judge our drawing a little bit, just kind of give us some parameters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start the center of the lamb's head, not right at center. I'm going to go a little bit over. He's a little off center. He or she is a little off center. And I'm going to make a little dot where I think the top of the head is. Then I'm going to come down here, and again, I'm just setting parameters for the drawing. I want to make sure he's nice and big. So I'm going to put a little dot here where his little, I guess you'd call it elbow is, right here. And then let's see, the top of his back is a little above center, about a quarter of the way over, maybe about a third of the way over, right there. And let's go back and start with the head. The top of the head's a nice arch. See how it's like a soft arch, and that arch actually comes over a little past that halfway. If that's halfway right there, that left, or on our right side of the head, comes a little past that halfway mark, and then we're going to draw a nice little curved ear. See how that's just kind of like a long, elongated oval shape? And we're going to do the same on this side, another little elongated oval shape. And then his face is almost triangular. It comes in and then kind of, see, it's just almost like a triangle. And the eyes are very far offset. And then the nose, don't make it too low. Right about here, I'm going to make a little triangle for his nose. And then a little, it's like a little line coming down from the nose, and then the little line for the lips. And then I'm going to come from about the middle of the face at an angle down to where that dot was that I made earlier. A little more water, thin out that paint just a little bit. And then from about the middle of the face over to this dot, and then it comes down and into his tail. That should be kind of curved there. And then this foot, I just kind of had it roll up like that. Come straight over with his chest. And then have another foot kind of rolled and tucked up. I went through a lot of pictures of sheep on the internet and finally found this cute little fella with his feet kind of rolled up under him, and he's sitting out in a field. And then we're going to go up. You know what? I think I'm going to have to move that tail over a little bit. So I don't do this often, but you all can see how I erase I tore a little bit of my paper towel and got it wet. And I'm just gonna, you always like to see that even a professional artist, an instructor, makes mistakes now and then too. I'm gonna move that tail over a little bit so that I have more room to draw this other leg in. So this leg comes back, and then his other leg that he's got behind him back here, and then I might even move that tail out a little bit more. So, just erase those tail lines. I'll draw that in a little darker so you all can see where I finished the actual drawing. I've got the tail coming here, and then I can fit his little back leg in here, and then I think we're all set. So I'll let you get caught up. Just try to keep the drawing easy, and I'll see you back here when you're ready, and we'll start the background. Okay, during the break I did touch up my little lamb a little bit. I made this shoulder a little wider, and something that you can do if you have some Q-tips around the house, you can just put a little water on your Q-tip, and we can erase a little bit like that as well. So I made his shoulder a little wider. I didn't want him to look too small. I like how big he fills up that canvas over here. All right, so now I am ready to work on the background. And for a farther background color, this beautiful light yellow-green, we're going to start with picking up our palette knife, and we're going to make two shades of that yellow-green, one a little lighter and one a little darker. So let's get 2 piles of yellow. This one has more yellow, this one's gonna have a little less. And then we're gonna pick up, I'm gonna wipe off my palette knife, and we're gonna pick up the ultramarine blue, that's the dark blue, that second cool dark blue over there. And let's put that in with the yellow. Oops, I put in way too much blue. I'm not getting off to a good start here today. All right, that's gonna be, I think what I'll do here instead is I'm going to put some of this green, I'm gonna just take it away and put it way over here. Save it for the next step. I'm gonna take this yellow, let's see if we can't get this to be a nice light yellow green. So very little blue into that pile of yellow is what I should have done. So once again, I'm going to take the darker green away, and we'll leave that for later. I'm going to cut this medium green in half, and I'm going to make one of them a lot lighter. Let's see, maybe take a little more that way. There we go. Now we're starting to get into the right color range. So what I'm going to have to do is get more yellow. So it's almost like it was 90% yellow and 10% ultramarine blue. I work with a lot of different paint companies, and colors react differently depending on whose company, what manufacturer you're using. So sometimes you have to kind of just a little trial and error. So this time that blue was pretty strong. I'm going to move this medium green over and leave that for the foreground area. Take just a little bit, and we're going to see if we can't get kind of a medium shade. Actually, let me take this over here and see what. Let's move some of that over. I'm just trying to get one medium shade of limey green and one light shade. So I'm gonna keep doctoring this one up till we get it to be real light. I'm gonna put a little white in it. There we go. Now that's pretty. So I just have 2 shades. I want to have this really light green, and then a little more of a medium light green for this step. So that was a little confusing getting you there, but it looks like it's mostly yellow with a little white right here. So that's the mostly yellow, a little white, and a tiny bit of ultramarine blue. And then the second pile did not have any white. It's just yellow and a little bit of ultramarine blue. And we're going to pick up our brush and hold it back a little bit. Don't clamp up on it and use it like a pencil or a pen. We want to hold it back like a paintbrush. And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to sweep with that brush, almost like I'm sweeping with a broom. I'm going to sweep that paint up, and then we're going to come over here and lay it down. And I like to hold my brush pretty shallow to the canvas, not 90-degree or 45-degree angle. Keep it long and low. Keep those brush strokes long and the brush low to the canvas. And I'm switching colors just to add some variety. It's just prettier, like you can see over here where there's a couple of different colors. I always say it's not like we're painting a wall in the living room. We don't have to have it be as one solid color. And it looks more like grass this way. Looks more like grass. And I use kind of an almost crisscross brush stroke, so it really gets good coverage on the over the canvas. We don't really want to see any white canvas kind of coming through. We want to just see paint. It's a little distracting when you see the canvas showing through. And I'm just spreading it. It should feel like it's like room temperature butter spreading under your brush. And you'll hear me say all the time, it's as if your brush isn't even touching the canvas, because the paint is a layer sliding between brush and canvas all the time. I'm coming down just a little bit below halfway here. Below those halfway marks, I'm coming down with this lighter green. Looks like I'm going to have to stop and make a little more of the 2 shades of light green. I'm kind of running low there. So, I've got my palette knife here. Let's see. And I'm going to have to get more yellow out. I tried to load extra yellow and blue and white because I knew we'd be making a lot of this green for the background. But we're using a lot of it. Now in this formula, it was yellow with a little white and very little ultramarine. I'm doing very cautiously on that ultramarine now. Well, I overdid it a little, I think. Yep, I probably could use that as my medium color, and I'm going to add a little white and a little yellow. I love that light color. Okay. Sweep that color up and just spread it nicely. And if it doesn't match the exact yellow, light yellow you had last time, that's okay, because again, it adds variety. And you'll see that artists add a lot of variety in their brush strokes. So it's just a little whiter than, and less yellow than the last lighter shade I made, earlier. But I like that. If you look closely at artwork that you love, you'll notice there are a lot of different beautiful colors in there. In an area that you think is all just green, well, it might be 2 or 3 shades of green. See, I like this darker color in there. Might have to get a little of that darker. And you can see how it's really spreading, nice and thick. That's what we like about oils. They stay on that, they keep their structure. They stand up. If you look at Van Gogh's paintings, they are really loaded thick with paint. And a little bit below halfway here. And you can see I'm going right up to the drawing of the lamb very carefully. It's okay if this is starting to dry now, that drawing, because we've wet it with water. It'll start to thin that paint out enough that it'll dry a little quicker than oils do normally. When they're not thinned out, they take a long time to dry, but if they're thinned, they get a chance to dry out a little bit. So that drawing's kind of dry. I'm going right up to the drawing. But, I go pretty fast in some of these areas, which is not important if you go fast or slow. I've just been painting a long time. and so I'm more comfortable. But I do stop right here when I'm getting up to the drawing, and I go just a little slower. So it takes a little practice. I've been doing it for many decades, and I really like that pretty background color. And I'm going to put just a little bit of that darker color around where those ears might be, or will be, so that those pretty white ears are going to show up nice against that little bit darker color. So you see I put that more medium shade right there by the ears, and I explained why I did that. And then I'm going to make up these darker colors. So this first, I'm going to pull this back over. This is the one I made earlier that was a little too dark, but that's going to be perfect for the foreground. And then I want 2 colors for that foreground grass. I'm going to add a little more blue. There we go. Those are 2 nice colors. So these colors are going to be used up in the foreground, and to get dimension in an oil painting, you know, we don't want them to look flat. We want it to kind of look 3-dimensional. So sometimes things just like changing the color from background to foreground helps the viewer see that there's 2 different planes that we're dealing with. And I'm just going to start the same way, sliding and spreading that darker paint around down here, and I just kind of just sweep it along next to the drawing. Use the little tip of the brush to get in there. Love this number 4 flat brush. It has nice corners to it, so you can get some nice tight little areas done. And I'm going to start mixing in some of the darker. Really like this darker color. We might make some more of that. So since I have to make some more of it, we'll go over that little recipe again, and you can always refer to your written instructions. That darker color I was taking really not too much blue, as we recall. And let's see, a little more yellow there. I want to add more blue, make that darker. And we do need a little more blue in there. All right. So that was just blue with a little bit of yellow. Going around the tail here. Spreading. Spreading that paint. Everyone loves the way oil paint is, so they call it the buttery medium. Medium is kind of what type. There's watercolor is one medium, pastels is another medium, oil. Acrylic is a medium. That's what they call the type of paint that you are using. So the oil medium is called the buttery medium because it does spread like butter. Once you get used to that feeling of that paint under your brush, you just kind of get addicted to it. Now we're going to just blur that up a little bit now, but we'll come back and kind of blur it more later and add those grasses that are in the front later. But that's it for this step. We're going to take a break. See you back here for step 3, and we'll start the lamb. So if you're ready, we're going to start mixing up all the colors that we see in this little lamb. I love to paint white or black animals and show my students how many colors there can actually be in there. I will try to remember to insert the royalty-free photo that I used for this painting. And you'll be able to see this lamb sitting in the field, and if you look closely, you'll actually see the little purples in his shadows, and the ultramarine, the cerulean or phthalo blue highlights on his head. See, this blue here is reflecting the sky. So you'll actually start, once you start painting and learning to see color, you will actually start seeing where there is lavender and where there is light blue in a white animal when they're sitting outside, or painting a black dog outside. In the blacks, you'll see reflected areas of blue sky, and in the fur on the dog. So you'll once you start learning about art and mixing color and making color and seeing color, you'll see a whole new world out there. Let's see. For the first thing I'm going to do is make those cerulean light blue colors that I was just talking about. So I'm going to take a little bit of white. We're going to make probably 3 shades of that light blue. One's just going to have a little bit of this beautiful, the first blue on your palette. It's either called phthalo or cerulean, depending on what kit you have. And we'll see already. Did the same thing I did earlier. Okay, that's going to be our medium blue. Let's get some more white. And just what was left on my palette knife there is going to make that the lighter, just barely a blue. And for the third shade, we're going to put down the white. This is going to be for this darker shade under his chin here. The white, maybe not as much white, and a little more. Ooh, that's a little dark. It's a little dark. I'm going to throw that white back in there. Okay, so that would be the darkest shadow color there. Then I'm going to make a few shades of purple for these purples here. So this one, it's a little more of a light reddish lavender, and these here are a little more of a bluish lavender. So we're going to make a couple shades of red lavender and a couple shades of blue lavender. Purple, lavender is just purple with white. So purple is made with your dark red, which is called purple red or crimson, and you need very little of it. You're going to see how much I put out. It's just that little bit. And then I'm going to come over here and get the ultramarine, and it's pretty much, I would say it's going to be like 25% to 75%. So I'm going to add a little more blue in there. And then we add white just to kind of lighten it up a little bit. I'm going to cut that pile in 2 because I want one lighter shade and one darker shade. So I'm going to add a whole bunch of white into that first one. And it looks like you might go ahead and do 3 shades. I'm going to say that's the darkest, and that's the middle, and then let's add a bunch of white to this and make that the lightest. So it just depends on how much white you have in the formula. The most white in this first pile, hardly any white in the last pile. There. Now I'm going to make that reddish lavender that I was talking about, where we're going to might have a little more of the red in there. So we have making the purple first. Let's add a little white to see what color we're working with. Some of this could probably go inside the ear, that darkest color. So I'm going to move that dark over here. I have the middle pile where we had a little more white. And then just get a little bit there with more white. And we have our 3 shades of red lavender. You see all these colors of what I see are what I see inside that lamb sitting out in the sunshine. So first thing I'm going to do, make sure my brush is clean, get all that green off of there. And just swish it around in that water and it really starts coming out. And then I'm going to put in those blue shadows that I was talking about in here. And I'm going to reach over and show you where I see a dark purple shadow is right down in here. I'm going very close to the grass, but I'm not trying to touch that purple, get that purple mixed in with the grass, or we'll get something kind of muddy. And that's where I see a few of those dark purples. I think there's a little bit of dark purple under his chin. I'm just starting to put the shadow colors in. So where the his foot curves down and touches the grass, I've got to put a little shadow down there, make that look like it's rolling down into the grass. That's how we get things to look curved or round. Kind of put a shadow down at the bottom of them and a highlight along the top. I'm going to start with the medium shade now. Let's see. Let's go with this medium shade of purple, kind of comes down his chest. And I'm just kind of doing the crisscross brush stroke again, kind of gives the texture of the fur. And then let's go over here. I'm going to really clean off my brush. Roll it around in that little cup of water. And then I'm going to pick up pure white, just right on the tip of my brush. And we're going to tap that in along the top of his head where that sunlight is really just reflecting all that white and light right on the top of his head and right along the ears. Now this, you see how I'm going very carefully with the tip of that brush next to that green, and just slide that little white paint along. Just try to stay away from the green now. See, I leave a gap, and you'll see in most projects I talk about this gap. You can still see that gold drawing underneath, so I don't have the green and the white touching yet. We'll fill in that gap at the last step. I'm going to put a little white on the tip of his nose, maybe coming down the front of his face. We'll come back and do that some more. He also has the highest highlight on his back, right before anything starts curving down into shadow. So the white coming down. And again, this number 4 brush with his sharp edges, it's really good for keeping good control. And another way to keep good control is to just keep just about that much paint on the end of your brush. Just about 1/3 of the brush should be covered with paint. Now there are some other ways to paint, really fun, big, chunky paintings. I picked up some green there, so I'm gonna go over here and wipe off before I start spreading it all into the white fur. And I'm gonna take that white that I was telling you about, that is the highest highlight, comes down his back. We're gonna try to leave those areas pure white. Maybe a little bit on his face in the front. And along the bottom of this ear. Well, did I do the bottoms? Well, I think the bottom of the ear is more of a light blue, which I may go grab that right now, that lightest blue. And we'll just kind of, there is a little bit more of a shadow down towards the bottom of the ear, so I'm using that lightest blue color. Putting that in down here along the bottom of the ear. And maybe right underneath the white, maybe on this top part of his head here. That's such a pretty color. And honestly, when you look at the photograph, you'll see that light blue in there. All it is a reflection in the animal's fur or hair, or is a reflection of the blue sky. That's where that light blue is going. And then for contrast, I'm just going to put a little of this red lavender in. That's where it starts turning into a shadow color. I'm going to use that red lavender right over here. And this is what helps the animal look three-dimensional and curved. A little more of this blue coming down here. Picking up, let's see, the medium purple. You may hear my dog snoring. He's very old and he's sleeping pretty hard. And this is kind of dramatic, this shadow on the side of the face. But we're going to put it in and be brave and put that in. I'm going to take this medium blue, put it here on the side of this face where we think there's a little more shadow. Looks like the sun's kind of overhead or maybe a little bit to his back, so he's kind of a little bit what we call backlit. And I'm going to take this medium blue here, coming down all the way down his leg with this pretty medium blue. If I'm getting ahead of you, you can pause the video. I try not to make the videos too long. I'm trying to keep it simple, but people tell me they have to pause a lot to catch up, especially when you're new. Believe me, I did not paint fast at all when I first started painting. I was very, very slow. And that's okay, it doesn't matter. I have students who paint very fast and are excellent painters, and I have students who paint very, very slow and are excellent painters. There really shouldn't be any discussion about how fast or how slow someone paints, because it does not make any difference. It's the end product and whether or not we enjoyed ourselves while we were making it. So, you know, if we're happy with the product in the end and we had a good time making it and we felt like we were getting into our creative self, then that's what matters most. And that you felt a little therapy, a little art therapy. It's a real thing. It's just, there were many years in this last decade that I was not able to create for myself. I was busy teaching, and there were a lot of reasons that I had to work a lot and didn't have time to create for myself. And that's not a good place to be if you're a creative person. You need to be creating. And actually, it's really because of COVID that I am able to paint more now, because I've had to cut back on my classes. Let's go ahead and put the pink ears in. Remember that red I made earlier? It's just going to be your crimson over here, your purple red with a little white. And we'll just kind of dab that in. You know what? We're going to need a little bit of this brighter red. Let's put a little of that in there. That's perfect. So both reds went into that formula. It's going to be both reds mixing into the white, and you get a pretty pink in there. A little bit of both reds. I'm picking up with my brush instead of the knife because it's such a little bit of paint. And I noticed one thing here on the lamb's face. In order for it to look like a little young lamb, their eyes are very, very wide set apart, and I did not do that as wide on this one. So, if this is your first video, you're seeing me make a lot of little mistakes. I'm going to move this eye over, but that's okay because we all make mistakes. We make them all the time, and in oil painting, they're so easy to fix. I'm taking a Q-tip with a little water. I just moved those eyes over, and then I'm going to bring that light blue. Oops, the brush is dirty. So we do lots of fun projects, and we're trying to get better and better on our YouTube live stream on the third Thursday of the month. It's at 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. I may that to a Saturday midday so that everybody could join in all over the country a little more conveniently, but we're just starting slow here, getting the live streaming set up. I like that little bit of pink that's glowing in the top of that ear. So I'm taking that bright, bright red and mixing it with white here with my brush. And I'm just going to tap it into that red so we can see a nice bright pink. The shape of those ears here aren't quite the shape I have over there, but I'm going to fix that later. We're just going to keep on moving. I'm going to put that nose in. Well, I'll wait on that. First of all, I'm going to finish these arms. I've just got a little bit more here down at the bottom. We're going to finish getting these little arms in with some of these lighter pastel colors. Get that little shadow in between the tail and the back leg with some of those darker colors. I'm going to put some, I'm out of bright white. Let me get some more bright white. In your second box, you'll receive the large tube of white because the little tubes of white over here don't last too long. So I'm going to take some of this white and let's bring it down along his arm here. Going to bring it down along this leg. Along the top of the tail, making sure I have white where I want it here before I move on to the facial features. So how about a little light purple and blue over here? Blending a little white in there, just kind of softening up those fun dark purples. And let me get some more white all the way down this arm here. So basically your cool colors are going to be right here under the shadow where his head's making a shadow. And the whites are going to be up on the highest parts of the body where the sunlight, pure white sunlight is hitting them there. And before we put those eyes and nose in, let me go ahead and just put in a little more of these little cheeks here, a little muzzle, I guess you'd call that. I'll put a little light lavender underneath his mouth there. And it's hard to see that, so I'm going to dab some more purple in there. There. And my little Tucker is snoring away. I don't know if you can hear him or not on the video. He's 14, been in the studio with me all those 14 years. A little Shih Tzu. Now he's going to really come to life here in a minute when I put the eyes. So you can use black. I don't usually put black out on my palette because there's just like pure white. There's very few things in the world that are pure black. I'm going to pick up with the corner of my brush a little bit of this dark burnt umber brown and take my corner of my brush and pick up a little bit of that ultramarine, and you just swirl those together and you get a really nice black. And he only has a little bit. Let me make a little bit more of that. You can also make it with your palette knife, but we're just going to make a little bit for that little nose and his eyes. So I'm picking up just a little bit of the burnt umber, just a little bit of the ultramarine blue. Tap those together, make a really pretty black. So black comes in so many shades. There's greenish black and purplish black, reddish black, brownish black, greenish black. But if you mix those two colors together 50-50, you'll get a pretty much of a really nice soft black. And I'm just going to get it right on the tip, tapping the tip of my brush. So there's only the tiniest little black all the way along the tip of that brush, and just tap right in the middle. And just getting it on the corners, and this is where we actually start drawing with the brush instead of painting. I'm just drawing a little nose on there. See, it's a triangle. And then there's a little line that comes down and kind of splits the lips, splits the muzzle. And then I'm going to just draw that little line there at the bottom for his lips. And then I'm going to dip into that pile of black that I made and just tap those little eyes in. And I'm sorry about all the noise in the hallway. There's a bridal shop next door, and they are having a good time out there in the hall. Celebrating somebody's new bridal dress. I'm moving that eye over one more time. Looks like I didn't move it over far enough the first time. Because like I said, their eyes are so wide set. See, that gives them that cute little innocent look. And then I'm going to take a little bit of white on my brush, move it over here to this black, mix it together with my brush and make a pretty gray. And that's, I'm going to put it on top of the nose, just that light, pretty gray. There we go. So their noses are, to keep them from looking flat, especially dogs' noses. I don't know as much about sheep's noses, but I painted a lot of dogs. It's almost a little box shape. So you have a little top to the box, and then the front drops down here into the shadow. So he's starting to look pretty cute. I think we will take a break here. I know there's a lot to absorb in that step. I had a lot going on, but we will, I'm just gonna put a little more shadow down here, maybe in here. We will take a break and you guys can catch up, and we'll see you back here for step 4, which will be finishing up. Ready to finish up, and let's fill in these gap areas right here at the bottom where I left a gap, and you can see this one's a little larger. I'm going to just pick up some more of that dark green, maybe fill in that little gap around his foot, covering up the yellow ochre drawing now. But I have to do that a little slowly, and I have to keep the paint just on the tip of my brush. Touch up around that tail and the foot. Just getting dark green on the very tip of my brush and just tapping it in there. Doesn't have to be completely filled in, but if you go a little slower on this step, you can fill in some of those gaps. And that's how we don't have paint smushing together and making all kinds of muddy colors, because that's what my beginner students always worry about the most. And again, that's why I have this number 4 kind of flat-edged sharp brush with the little corners, because then we can get into those little places with just a little patience and a little bit of paint on the tip of the brush. Then I think we filled in most of those little gaps. I wanted to fill those in and make sure there's nothing else I want to do here on the lamb, because now we're getting ready to pull these grass strokes up over the top of the lamb so it looks like he's nestled down into that little field. This method of painting is called direct method painting. That means you're directly always painting wet paint into wet paint, and you'll get used to it. It's everything kind of just slides and glides together so nicely. I'm gonna have to make some more. Once you learn how to control the brush and the paint, it makes beautiful brush strokes painting in this method. So I just scraped up the little bit of green that I had left, and I'm going to make a dark green again. So we were using ultramarine blue and a little bit of yellow, making a nice dark green. I made these grassy field grass is pretty dark, so I'm going to keep adding some dark blue till I feel like that's going to stand out pretty dark. I think that's nice. Let's see. So that was ultramarine blue with just a little of your bright yellow, your lemon yellow. I'm going to just, instead of sweeping up a big clump of the paint like we have been doing when we go to slide the paint along, I'm going to just tap the chisel end of my brush in there and get some paint just on the very end. I don't know if you can see, just on the very end. And then I'm going to just kind of draw a couple of grass strokes in there. Just kind of wiggle my brush. I know you're probably scared to take it over the top of the lamb, but here we go. We're going to take some up so he really looks like he's sitting in there. Let's make some kind of tall. Now I've got to go very lightly. I was pushing too hard and it didn't show up over top of that yellow grass, because if you push too hard, you're going to be digging down into that yellow grass, into that lighter yellow background color. So see how I'm going to just hold the brush ever so lightly and just kind of let that brush sweep up and down. Make the grass kind of going in different directions so it looks more natural. I'm going to make another color. Well, let me use up all this dark and then I'll make one more grass that's another color. I think I'll make one that's still dark, but a little more of a yellow green. So I'm just using ultramarine, but this time I'm going to put a little more yellow in it. Ultramarine blue with the bright yellow. So again, I don't want every brush stroke in the grasses to be the exact same color, so I made one that's just a little more yellow green. I think it'll be a nice contrast or complement to the make some little squiggle lines so it looks really natural. There we go. Sometimes some little flyaways like that, I call them. And I think I'll put in one more, maybe right over there. There. There's our little lamb, our little spring lamb. Let me do a couple more little things to his face to make sure I'm real happy with that. That's kind of the focal point. Everybody's gonna be looking at that face. Again, I earlier mentioned I wanted to come back and look at the shape of these ears. They come, I guess when I see the picture, when I impose the picture, I'll superimpose or picture-in-picture the actual lamb picture I was using. The ears come up a little bit to a point and then curve down. So I'm going to add that little point in there. A little bit of a point at the top part right there. And then they kind of curve down and around. And make sure they're big enough. This one looks kind of flat. I think I'm going to push it up and make it a little rounder. And also his head looks a little flatter than the other lamb, my first one. So I'm going to round out his head a little bit. I think that's a prettier shape. Don't want to pick up any of that green. I'm trying carefully not to. And I can I've got a little white on the corner of my brush. I might just tap a little sparkle in his eye. There we go. And maybe a little more shadow on the side of his face over here. There. To try to get the bone structure of that little lamb, give him some little bone structure there, little cheekbones, and there we go. I'm liking all that. Maybe a little bit more shadow color here. Maybe a little more shadow along the tail. And clean off all that shadow color. I'm going to come back with the white, and now I'm going to fill in very carefully that little gap area Just tapping some white along there and along here. Kind of have to be slow and careful at this point with the white and that green getting so close together. But those are your last final little steps. And one more step here. I might take this, if I have any left of this dark here, just kind of get that little shoulder. That helped a lot. Getting a little shadow to kind of create the shape of his little face. Okay, I think we're about done. I want to make sure he has a nice round shape to his face right there. And I think we're about done. I hope you all enjoyed the spring lamb, and we will see you back here for another project, and happy painting. And always feel free to email me at yourpaintbox.com. I've been answering questions from beginners for 20 years, and I'd be happy to answer your questions. And we'll see you next time. Bye. So I hope you all enjoyed painting the lamb. It was a little bit more of a difficult drawing, but we went through it step by step. And I think it was a fun project, and I love how bright and colorful it is for the month of March to get a little color for spring. And hopefully March will go out like a lamb. And we'll see you next month for some fun projects.